always one to meet the neighbors.
You like to chat with the neighbors,
yeah, because, you know, so I went over to the guy, I knocked on the door next door to where I live, and I say to the guy, I said, hey, I'm your new neighbor, you know, and I said, good to see you, you know, nice to run into you, you know, welcome to the neighborhood, you know. And so the guy, I said, what do you do for a living there, sir, you know, if you don't mind me asking? You know, what do you do for a living? I'm a nightclub comic, I tell the guy. So he says to me, he says, I work down at the University of Science there. He says, that's
a good school, by the way.
I can't remember the exact place.
Sure.
But he says, I'm a professor of logic.
Oh.
So he says, the guy says, logic. Now, what the hell is that? I never heard tell of that. He says, oh, well, he says it's a kind of a pattern of syllogistic. Well, he says it's hard to explain. He says, why don't I give you an example? So I said, fair enough. Why don't you do that? So the guy says, well, he says, let me ask you a question. He says, do you own a doghouse? So I go, yes, I do. He says, well, then that means you probably have a dog. I said, yes. He says, well, that means you're likely you have a family if you have a dog. I said, yes, I do. He said, well, then that means you got kids, you're married? I said, yes, I am. He says, well, then you're a heterosexual man. I said, yes, sir, I am. He says, well, you see, that's logic there. I asked if simply from finding out you had a doghouse, I made this series of inferences, and I found that you're a heterosexual man simply from the fact that you had a doghouse. Well, I said, good God, isn't that something?
Okay.
So I said, well, I won't waste any more of your time there, neighbor. And I said, I'll see you later.
See you around. Okay.
So I said, come by one day and have a chicken with me. So anyways, I left. So I left. So I go to get a bus, you know, to the bus stop. And I walk down to the bus stop, and I'm still thinking about this thing that happened to me, you know. And I'm standing at the bus, and no bus coming at all, you know, and 5 or 6 of us standing around, and one guy lights up a cigarette there, and he goes, as soon as you light up a cigarette, the bus comes. And he smokes the whole damn cigarette, no bus comes.
Right.
So I said to the guy, well, that theory really worked, huh?
Yeah.
And the guy goes, well, sometimes it works. Anyways, the guy goes, what's new with you? I go, well, I had an interesting thing happen to me today. I said, I met my neighbor. And he goes, oh, yeah? I go, he had a hell of an interesting job. I said, he's a professor of logic down at the University of
Science. Yeah.
And so the guy says, is that so? He says, professor of logic. He goes, what the hell is that, logic? I said, well, it's a series of something or other.
Right.
I said, I can't remember exactly, but I said, I'll give you an example if you want to hear an example.
Yeah.
So the guy goes, all right, fair enough. So I said, let me ask you this. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you own a doghouse? And the guy goes, no, I don't own a doghouse. So the guy says, oh, yeah, you're one of them gays.
All right.
Are you talking about Melrose Place? No, because
You're the biggest ass I ever met. I love you for it.
No, because I swear to God, and when I lived in L.A., I lived on the actual street called Melrose Place. There's an actual street.
There's a Melrose. Is there really a Melrose
There's really
place?
a Melrose
There is a Melrose
Place.
Place.
You
All
know
right.
this, right?
Yes, it's true.
So they opened a restaurant called Melrose Place on it,
Uh-huh.
and then it's right beside my house, and every time I go out, there's all these, like, tourists, and these tourists, like, they're always fat, and they're taking pictures, standing in front of this restaurant.
Uh-huh. Yeah? A scene where you and him embrace?
Yeah, lots of making out.
Oh, for God's sake.
Nothing but making out.
All right.
It's like 9.5 weeks, but Carrot Top. Basically what we were doing.
Wow! I gotta check out that movie.
Is it called 9.5 Seconds? Like he's premature ejaculator.
We got it.
You know what happened? happened? This is what happened. You know what happened? He said 9.5 seconds, and I'm looking at him because I know there's more. And I wait and wait, and I see the glimmer in the eye, and then bang! I thought you were going to, but no. But what's the movie going to be called? Really?
I know what it's going to be called.
Yeah, what's that?
If it's got Carrot Top in it, you know what a good name for it would be?
What's that, Norm?
Box Office Poison.
I'm in it too.
She's in it.
What about my career?
Courtney Thorne Smith, the girl sitting to your left, is in the movie.
I'm going to go see it for Courtney.
After you scare everybody else away?
No, I love this girl. I would see any movie with this girl in it. She's a beautiful lady and a talented, nice talk show guest.
Okay. As evidenced by her appearance on our rival show. All right, well, there's this 2-hour season finale of Melrose Place. There's this movie coming out.
Yes.
Title undetermined at this point.
Chairman of the board.
Oh, all right. Do something with that, you freak.
I bet the board is spelled B-O-R-E-D. I was in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
I met a good old boy down there, and he said, he said, you know Andy Richter?
Yeah? Yeah, he did?
Yeah.
You met a guy in Georgia, and he said, you know Andy Richter?
Oh, yeah, you guys do well there.
Oh.
And he said, I said, yeah. He said, have you ever heard an Andy Richter joke? I said, no. He said, well, most of it's based on him being Swedish-German. And then he told me an Andy Richter joke. And
really?
But I didn't know he was Swedish-German. I thought it was all nonsense.
Yeah, well, now this lines up perfectly. Let me ask you something, because it sort of relates to the first...
Wait, don't you want to hear the joke?
No. Oh, you're down to 6. You're down to 6. All right, this joke will get you back up. You can get him back. Let's hear the joke.
Well, the fellow says, he says, you ever hear the time about the old prospector? That's how he tells you.
Yeah.
He says, man, there was an old prospector, and he was prospecting for gold, and he was having a hell of a time getting any gold. It was an empty stake, I believe. And he said he'd come into town one day. He'd been in the mine for a good 8 months. He said, by God, he said, I'm only flesh and blood. Sure. Yeah. And I need a woman, you know. And so he goes into town. He goes up to the bartender. He says, bartender, he says, man, I've been in that mine for a hell of a long time, and I'm only flesh and blood. I need a woman. Well, the bartender says, hell, there ain't no women in this town. If you want to do any of that business, all we got is Andy Richter, the Swedish-German. The prospector, he says, no, he says, hell, I ain't into that funny stuff, you know. He says, I'll be fine. So he goes back to his state, you know, and he's back in that mine, man, and 6 months passes, and a year passes, and Conan, you know, people are weak. Man is made of flesh and pride, as the scriptures tell us, and by God, that old prospector finally broke to his knees, and he said, I'm no worse than he went back to the bar. Yeah. He was a beaten man. He says to the bartender, he says, hell, man, I've been in that place 2.5 years. A man has needs, and if you say there's no women in this here town, he says, well, I'll have to go for Andy Richter, the Swedish-German. But he says, listen now, he says, man, I'm a tough old hombre, you know, and I got friends now. He says, I don't want anybody to know about this. You know, this is back in the old days.
Sure, yeah.
He says,
I can tell by the accent, yeah.
He says, I got my cowpoke friends and so forth. I'd hate to hell anybody know about this. You know, this got to be all secret. Nobody. I say, nobody can know about this. Bartender says, well, 4 people will know about it. How do you figure that? He says, well, he says, I'll know about it. He says, you'll know about it. Andy Richter, the Swedish-German, will know about it. And the fella that has to hold down Andy will know about it. Why? Because Andy Richter, the Swedish German, he don't go for that funny business neither.
Well, at least you left me my dignity.
Yeah.
I like the way that story ended.
Yeah,
That was
because
a
you weren't gay.
Right. No, but that's not beside the point.
You were raped.
No, it's more.
Your life?
Like, for instance, today I was driving in a car. You were kind enough to bring a car to bring this old chunk of coal here to the studio.
We send cars for our guests, yes.
Yeah, so I got in it, and I get material that way. So my driver.
What do you mean? How do you get material that way? You get in the car, and what happens?
My driver tells me a joke.
The driver we sent to pick you up told you a joke.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell it now on the show.
Yeah, that's how I get a lot of my material.
Okay. Why don't we just have him on next time?
That guy. That guy. No, wait till you hear me do it. So the guy, he goes, I say, I'll be the guy.
Okay.
A moth goes into a podiatrist's office.
A moth goes into a podiatrist's office. Right?
You are correct. A moth goes into a podiatrist's office, and the podiatrist's office says, "What's the problem?" And the moth says, "What's the problem? Where do I begin, man?" He goes, "I go to work for Gregory Olinovich, and all day long I work." Honestly, Doc, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I don't even know if Gregory Olinovich knows. He only knows that he has power over me, and that seems to bring him happiness. But I don't know. I wake up in a malaise, and I walk here and there. And the podiatrist says, "Oh, yeah?" And the moth goes, "Yes." And he goes, "At night, I sometimes wake up, and I turn to some old lady in my bed that's on my arm. A lady that I once loved, Doc. I don't know where to turn to. My youngest, Alexandria. She fell in the cold of last year. The cold took her down, as it did many of us. And my other boy, and this is the hardest pill to swallow, Doc. My other boy, Gregaro Ivanilidovich. I no longer love him. As much as it pains me to say, when I look in his eyes, all I see is the same cowardice that I catch when I take a glimpse of my own face in the mirror. If only the cowardice was stronger, then perhaps I could bring myself to reach over to that cocked and loaded gun that lays on the bedside behind me. And end this hellish facade once and for all.
How long a drive was this? Do you live in the valley? Where do you live? Please, sorry.
He says, "Doc, sometimes I feel like a spider, even though I'm a moth, just barely hanging on to my web with an everlasting fire underneath me. I'm not feeling good." And so the doctor says, "Moth, man, you're troubled. But you should be seeing a psychiatrist. Why on earth did you come here?" And then the moth said, "Because the light was on." When I was young, there was a fella went by the name of Jacques de Gautier. And he was from Témiscamingue, Quebec. And Jacques de Gautier, he was a fella that really thought. And he was smart, you know. He was our hope, I guess. And he was, while I was scrambling to get out of high school, Jacques Zagatino had already...
I think you just changed his last name.
Well, you know, a man grows. But this is the point.
Yeah.
Jacques de Gatineau, he went to McGill University and he got 3 degrees, by golly. And he went over across the pond to the fellers with Cambridge, and he even stood up to them. And we thought, boy, he's going to be the next. We had Jean Marchand, Gérald Pertier, Pierre Trudeau, the 3 wise men of Quebec. By God, Jacques de Gatineau was going to be the next.
Give me the next gun.
Yeah, but he vanished. And I met him, I started to do stand-up and travel from here to there and to here again. And one time I was in Niagara Falls, and gosh, I went over to the SeaWorld there. You know how they have the SeaWorld? You know, with the different fish. You know.
I didn't know that, but okay. Yeah. Yes.
Beluga.
The SeaWorld. I've been
Sure.
there many a time.
Okay, so I was checking out the beluga whales and stuff, and I look over, and who do you think I see?
I hope it's that guy.
No, it was just an attendant, but he showed me to the place I wanted to see, which is where they feed the little baby dolphins, because I love dolphins, you know. And who do I see there but Jacques de Gatineau? And here he is, he's feeding the baby dolphins. And I go up to him and I go, Jacques de Gatineau, I feel shame for you. You were our hope. You were to go to Canada, Canada's nation's capital of Ottawa. And you were to be a great man, Jacques de Gatineau. And we were all, we pinned all of Témiscamingue, Quebec, pinned our hopes on you. Now, that's a hell of a burden for a man to have a town's hope pinned on them, isn't it, Conan?
It is a big burden.
So he was feeding these baby dolphins, and I said, I'm ashamed of you, Jacques de Gatineau. You could have done so many great things. And he said, I think I'm serving a youthful porpoise. Now, I believe that...